Good day, everybody, and you're all most welcome to today's CNPS technical presentation. These are presentations that we hold. I personally am hosting these every 2 weeks, and in between we have maybe people filling in like Roger Anderton or Franklin or David de Hilster. But today is one of my hostings, if you like, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce to you a new person. Well, he has been involved actually in our dissident groups for some time. He appears now and again, and actually I've had the pleasure of meeting him in person, because most of the people I've been engaged with for some years I've only met through virtual means. I haven't met him in person, but Toby was in Ireland. He was doing a bit of a tour, a music tour, I think, about 3 months ago, and I had the pleasure of meeting him in the northwest of Ireland for a day. And we actually spent most of the time talking about physics and some of the ideas, and we got the germ of the idea of his giving a presentation to one of these Saturday sessions. So today, well, the title we agreed was Space-Vortex Structure of the Electron. And now there's this gentleman from India. I think he's deceased. Toby will tell you all about him in a moment. Paramahamsa, if I'm pronouncing it, Tewari. And he's the instigator of some very, very interesting ideas, which Toby has discussed with me, and he'll be discussing in more detail today. So he says, basically today's proceedings will be a description of the theory and application to power generation of Tewari. In the process, mass, charge, and gravity from what is called the space-vortex structure of the electron. The electrons being fundamental, will be discussed. So that's basically it. Now, Toby was having a few little problems. He's on a Mac there. He's back actually. So I'll be handing over the floor to him in a minute, and we'll be bringing up some PowerPoint slides which will help the audience hopefully. And I think he also wants to show a video. So we may have one or two teething problems with that. I hope you'll bear with me. As usual, there will be a possibility for further discussion. We have 2 hours devoted to this presentation today. Well, the norm is maybe to split it 50-50, to have the speaker speaking for about an hour and then an hour discussion. But we're not very prescriptive on that. If the speaker wants to speak for 1.5 hours and only have a half an hour discussion, that's fine. Or if sometimes he only speaks for half an hour and we have 1.5 hours discussion. But probably to the 50-50 rough rule is a good idea. If the speaker wants to speak for a little more, 15 minutes more, there's no problems. There's a lot of chat which is going on in the comment section, mainly from people who are participating in Facebook or YouTube, and that's fine. If you have a very specific question, you might say specific question for the speaker or for Toby, because otherwise we might miss it. We think you're just chatting between yourselves, and we'll try to address it. And I think if it's a very urgent thing, which without explaining which, you might find it very hard to progress, we might interrupt Toby. I'm sure he won't mind that, but that's only in extremis. In general, we'll let him continue uninterrupted until the end of his presentation, and then we'll bring in people. Now, of course, we also have people in what's called the green room. So other than the speaker, we have a few people on the green room, and they will be able to come in and engage in a more one-to-one discussion. So I'm expecting them to come in, and if they don't, I'll volunteer them anyway, because I want to hear what some of our regular people have to say. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Toby onto the screen. You're up, Toby, now, and I'm going to hand over to you totally. So The basic thing about the PowerPoint is I have them here. You've emailed them to me. So you'll have to say, please, Ian, would you put up the PowerPoint and tell me when to advance? But apart from that, you have complete control yourself, and you can tell us when we need to do anything. Okay?
Okay, you can hear me?
Can hear you perfectly now, yes.
Okay, well, I put in a request to management because Ian and I just spent a half an hour trying to get StreamYard to work, and I've got the latest, greatest MacBook with all the latest, greatest software, and it locked up repeatedly. I can't share my PowerPoint here. I can't control my PowerPoint from here, so I was hoping to show some videos, but I suspect that will not work. And so other than that, I guess we're ready to get started. And what I want to talk about today is my relationship with former director of the Nuclear Power Corporation of India, Paramahamsa Tewari, who I first visited in 1993, December, having been in correspondence with him since about 1992. And he was an electrical engineer involved in building nuclear power plants in India, and also was very heavily involved in the alternative physics community, communicating with people like Stefan Marinoff and many of the other theoreticians of the time of the 70s and 80s and early 90s that were in the dissident physics community. So I guess if you want to see if you can get that first slide up, Ian, we'll take a start there. So basically, what I want to talk about is Tewari's space-vortex theory. And I would like to ask the audience for help. Basically, you know, I've been watching these presentations and been a part of this since it started in the late 90s and has since morphed into what it is today. And I've always kind of sat in the background because I'm not a theoretist, and you know, my math skills are rather weak compared to mostly what I see on this platform, people talking about the relativity theory, quantum mechanics equations. And I look at the basic nature of reality through the hardware. So I was most impressed with Tewari's theory, which he called space-vortex theory, and also with the hardware he was trying to build in order to resolve some of the basic fundamental questions of where energy comes from and how current is transformed, or matter energy is transformed within an electrical circuit. And of course, his main interest came from his being an electrical engineer involved in power generation. So next slide. Now, Ian, I don't know if you have control of that little presentation button in the lower right-hand corner, that little screen. Do you have that?
And let me just see, with this format, I'm not sure if I do, Toby. Are you worried about the size of it?
Well, I'm worried about having too much information presented all at once to the audience. All this text is really difficult. And it's hard for me to even see it on my screen. I'll put my glasses on here. But the way I had set the PowerPoint up, if you can run PowerPoint the way it's meant to be run, it should transition if you use that presentation mode, which is in the lower right-hand corner.
See, I don't think I have that mode because I think I just have the raw, well, not the raw data, just the finished data.
Okay, so StreamYard is not able to communicate with PowerPoint, apparently. And so I would suggest to CMPS they find something better than PowerPoint. You know, we've been doing video conferences for years now, and I've never seen anything like this before, happen like this before.
I'm not defending them, but if you put these things up yourself, you would have that control. It's just that once you send it to me, I don't.
That doesn't make sense at all because it's just basically a PowerPoint file. But anyway, let's get past that. And basically, you know, there's a lot of information on this slide that people are looking at. So I can read it to you or you can read it. But basically, you know, he was born sometime 1936 or 7. One of the last times I visited him in India, of about the 7 times I visited him in India. he had gone back because of some property transactions that he had to do, and he found that the birth certificate that had been recorded was apparently not accurate. And so all his life he thought he was born in 1937, and then he found out towards the end of his life he was born in 1936. So that's just an interesting human interest story here. So he got his degree in electrical engineering from Benares Engineering College, and he managed large nuclear engineering construction projects for the Department of Atomic Energy in India. And when I visited him in 1993, he took me on a tour of the Kaiga generation station, which was in the middle of a jungle because in India they decided to put nuclear power plants as far away from population centers as possible. So it was in the middle of a tiger preserve area, and also the cooling water for that plant then became a large reservoir to be used for another project, which was hydroelectric power for the Karnataka Power Corporation. So he retired as an executive director of the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. And his ideas on the basic nature of space, energy, and matter resulted in a new theory titled Space-Vortex Theory. He's written a number of books on all of that. And, unfortunately, they're not really readily available. He started off with the origin of electrons, mass, charge, gravitational, electromagnetic fields. He first published this and recorded it with the government of India in 1978, his ideas on space vortex theory. The best reference that is available, if anybody wants to order this book, this is still available. This is Aperian Press. I think you're all familiar with Roy Keyes' work. And in a book called What is the Electron, one of his basic paper and theories have been presented. This is still available. I think you can get it through Amazon. I just picked up an extra copy of it, but I would highly recommend that people add this particular book to their library. Edited, let's see, Aperian, Montreal, published by Roy C. Keyes. The website is redshift.vif.com, and that's a 2005 publication. So next slide. So that is the Kaiga generating station. When I was there, none of that was there. There were a couple of big holes in the ground, and there were no backhoes or bulldozers. There were women with baskets on their head excavating giant holes for the reactors. The first reactor was partially built when I was there, and they had not installed the turbines yet. Okay, next slide. So his space vortex theory, the intuition that he had, which was guided by what he'd read in the ancient Vedic text, by the way, which described the nature of space and the creation of matter. He was also guided by the properties that had been postulated by Newton, René Descartes, James Maxwell, Sir Oliver Lodge, Albert Einstein, and Edward Schrödinger. His space vortex theory has proven that, according to him, space vacuum is non-material, it's incompressible, it's non-viscous, it's continuous, it's massless fluid, and can possess a steady flow varying from 0 to light infinity, speed of light c. Next slide. His basic postulates, which he calls also first principles, when you read his work, you'll see it referred to as first principles. The medium of space throughout the universe is an eternally existing, non-material, continuous, isotropic fluid substratum. The medium of space has a limiting flow speed equal to the speed of light relative to the absolute vacuum, and a limiting angular velocity when in a state of circulating motion. The medium of universal space is eternal and endowed with motion. That is his space vortex theory. And he will begin to derive some mathematics, which is basic calculus and differential equations, which I was kidding with Dennis Allen. That left me 53 years ago after I got out of the class and practiced as an engineer when we didn't have to use it. And so I'm asking all of the participants of this session to help all of us understand exactly what Tewari was saying by examining his mathematics. Okay, next slide. So what is space? What is out there between the galaxies? It's a non-material, incompressible fluid devoid of any known property of matter, such as mass, density, discreteness, viscosity, elasticity, or compressibility. Further, if the properties of mass and charge and electron must be derived from the first principles proposed by Descartes, Faraday, Maxwell, and Thomson, then a massless and chargeless fluid that as a vortex can form the structure of an electron must be assumed. Next slide. So he offers as proof of these postulates that the universal substratum of space with non-material properties has real existence is provided by using the equations that he came up with, the basic properties of the electron: mass, charge, inertia, and gravity. When he says non-material, it signifies a massless, densityless, incompressible, non-viscous, and continuous fluid. The absolute vacuum of space with non-material properties is called space. Okay, next slide. So this is the fundamental electron vortex structure. And how that arises is described in his work on the origins of mass in a book called Beyond Matter. So I'll get to that in a little bit. How does this come to be? But basically, he sees the electron vortex structure as an irrotational vortex of massless, non-viscous, incompressible, three-dimensional continuous fluid. And his drawing of the electron, you will see that in the center of this diagram, there is a spherical void. And you will see that, let's see here, absolute vacuum. The spherical interface, lower left-hand side of that diagram, that spherical interface is like the surface of a bubble floating in water. So outside the bubble, there's water. Inside the bubble, there's no water. In the case of the electron, outside the electron is what might be termed the ether or space. And inside the electron is void. It's the only place in the universe where there is nothing. So when this vortex is rotating, there's an infinite accelerational field, c squared radius of the electron due to circulation of space at speed c. So this bubble is rotating at the speed of light. And basically you have a rotation of absolute vacuum space at limiting speed of light around that surface. It creates a vortex around it. And from that would be derived the properties of mass, electron charge, gravity, electrical fields, etc. So next slide. Now, how is this stable? Why does it not blow up and why does it not compress to nothing? And he says the reason it maintains its specific size and specific radius is due to two factors. So when you consider the circular section of the interface, the radial velocity gradient is c squared over re. Next slide. If the void shrinks to a smaller radius, the value of omega, back me up on my math here, Ian. What do we call omega? Value of?
Well, it's probably the circular speed, maybe.
It's rotational speed, yeah. But that Greek letter, I'm having a little bit of a brain.
Well, you can either pronounce it omega or omega.
Okay, omega.
You got it right, yeah.
Yeah, I want to get this right for the audience. Okay, I'll show my ignorance and ask for everyone's help. The value of omega increases proportionally, which is not possible according to postulate 2 because you're limited to the speed of light. So the void thus expands back to its original size. In the event that the void tends to grow to larger, the inward acceleration field, c squared over the radius of the electron, opposes this increase, and any increase in the radius of the electron decreases the velocity gradient omega to a lower value, which is no longer sufficient to sustain the void. The sphere of the void is thus reduced to its original size, meaning that void is stable because of these factors. The other factor is the property of non-viscosity of space, which maintains the space vortex eternally, except for its annihilation on meeting a similar vortex with an oppositely oriented field. Okay, next slide. Go for next slide.
Sorry, just having a little difficulty there. Just try again.
Okay.
There. Okay.
Okay, so the radius of the electron, now here's the kicker, I love it. The electron has enormous dimensions, not 10 to the minus 13s as expected from classical physics. And so all you quantum mechanics, particle physics guys out there in the audience, I want you to take a real close look at this. So as expected, it actually is 10 to the minus 11, 100 times greater. And he published that in Beyond Matter, page 19, 1993, page 31. Now, interestingly enough, a Russian chap named Dmitry Blakinstev had found earlier this value, and it was presented in Problems of the Structure of Elementary Physics in a book which I have, and in a book called Philosophical Problems of Elementary Particle Physics, translated by George Yankovsky, Progress Publishers, Moscow, 1968. And that book is available. If you go to abebooks.com, you can find a copy of that book. Okay, next slide. So, who is this guy, Dmitry Ivanovich Blahinsky? This guy was a heavyweight, okay? And what he said was, there are several lengths that might aspire to be characteristic of the dimensions of the electron. If we proceed from modern theoretical electrodynamics, which has been elaborated better than any other field theory, the conclusion seems to be that the electron has enormous dimensions, not 10 to the minus 13 as expected from classical physics, but 10 to the minus 11th, 100 times greater. 10 to the minus 11th is the size of the region in which the vacuum about the electron is polarized. So as I said before, you can get that book, you can read the paper. Perhaps I could upload a number of Tewari's papers to the CMPS website, and people could reference them and access Tewari's papers from CMPS website. I think that would be great if we could share all these papers with people. Well, this guy was a physicist, one of the creators of the Department of Nuclear Physics at Moscow State University. In 1956, he's one of the founders and elected as the first director of the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research. He designed and supervised building of the first commercial nuclear reactor, the Obninsk 6 megawatt nuclear power plant, which went online in 1954. Element 104, rutherfordium, RF, was first synthesized here. So this is a little sidetracked into history, but I find it interesting that both these guys that came up with 10 to the minus 11th were involved in nuclear power plant construction. So on the lower right-hand side is a picture of that nuclear reactor. And I've worked in 2 nuclear power plants in my life, and I never heard about this plant. And it was the first one, the first commercial nuclear reactor, and it went online in 1954. So they forgot to tell us that when we did our training. But anyway, let's go to the next slide. So the electron velocity field, and basically the field is at the void/ether interface. So at the interface of the bubble, you have these particular fields. And I'll leave people with looking at the right-hand side, where we have a section that we're going to integrate, and we're going to use this section and the postulates that he described concerning light velocity to find the mass of the electron and the radius of the electron. So one next slide, please. Electric charge is the effect of the space circulation produced on the interface of a fundamental particle of matter. It is derived as follows. Consider an elemental surface on the interface, which has an area dA equals 2 pi r sub b sine theta r sub b d theta. The electric charge on the elemental surface is defined from the first principles as the surface integral of the tangential velocity of space on each point of the surface. So next equation, dq, you can see that, 2 pi re sine theta, etc. The radius of the void created follows the relationship based on that previous equation, omega equals c divided by re. When you do the substitutions, shown by the arrows, you come up with electric charge experimentally determined as 4 times 4.8 times 10 to the minus 10. So that's an experimental value. And when you plug that into the equation, you get the radius of the electron is 4 times 10 to the minus 11 centimeters. So my challenge to the audience here, and to all the people typing in the sidebar all their comments, is, would you agree with this if you look at Tewari's math, that the size of the electron as known by physics is way off, 100 times off from what the Russian and the Indian have come up with? So next slide, please. So the mass of the electron, the fluid space and circulation at speed c within the volume of the spherical void, is qualitatively the basic state of energy. At the instant of creation of this void, and I'll talk about how that gets created a little later, this energy is pushed out from within the void and distributed in space as continuously varying velocity and acceleration fields that appear as gravity and electrostatic and electromagnetic fields. So now we're talking about what is gravity and how do these fields that we are so familiar with come into being. Electron mass equals the electron's central void volume times the speed of light. The volume integral velocity of space circulation within the void prior to its creation is the mass of the electron. Okay, next slide, please. So Tewari also used this mathematics to describe the unit electric charge of the electron. The surface integral of the tangential space velocity on the interface of the sphere between the internal void and space, that's the bubble I talked about before, inside versus outside, is defined as the unit of electrical charge of the equations. And when Tewari does all this math, all the universal constants that we're so familiar with in physics also fall out and matches what he comes up with using his concepts of how the electron is formed. So you have there the charge equation, and basically the diagram shows what he used to come up with that charge equation. Next slide, please. So basically that book I was talking about before, good source, what is the electron? The mass of the electron. Dimensions of mass come out to be length to the fourth divided by t. You know, and I also found that very interesting when I first started researching this, that the units of mass include time. How is time related to the weight of this book? You know, what's going on there? Why is time involved as a unit of mass? And I did a little research, of course, and we find out that something every physicist, I guess, knows, that in the CGS system of units, the unit of mass is centimeter fourth divided by seconds. And 1 gram being defined as 8.6 times 10 to the 6th centimeter to the fourth per second. The dimensions of mass include time in Tewari's Space-Vortex Theory. And I also noted that Albert Einstein said that when forced to summarize the general theory of relativity in one sentence, time and space and gravitation have no separate existence from matter. So that's something to pontificate upon. We also reference in Encyclopedia Britannica the kilogram defined in terms of Planck's constant also has kilogram times meter squared per second squared. So I leave that to the audience to figure out why time is an essential piece of what we consider mass. Next slide. The gravitation, according to space-vortex theory, is caused due to the mass property of matter, but the process of creation of mass and matter is not sufficiently dealt with in contemporary physics. Yeah, no kidding. That was an understatement from Tewari. I should have that in quotation. The basic equations for the electron's mass and charge from new principles arising from the space-vortex structure of the electron have been derived by Tewari's space-vortex theory. His theory shows that gravitational and electromagnetic fields are shown to be the structural fields of the electron. New formulas to derive the surface gravity of the sun, the earth, planets, and the galaxy from the spatial acceleration field around cosmic bodies have been discovered through examination of the space-vortex structure of the electron. Next slide. So using his space-vortex theory on how the electron's formed and what mass is, he's able to show, and if you can look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth row down, he's able to derive the acceleration of gravity at the surface of the planets and the sun using his space-vortex theory. Next slide. Okay. The creation of cosmic matter. How is matter created? Well, Tesla had a pretty good idea about that as well. We'll get to that in a minute. The metagalaxies and galaxies observed in the universe are fundamentally localized space vortices initially derived from the primordial universe space motion. The space circulation at the center will have to be at the speed of c to enable the creation of cosmic matter. Within the central zone of our galaxy, a nearly spherical volume of radius 203,000 times the sun's radius is the region of continuous creation of matter starting from electrons and positrons. In the central zone of the sun, within a diameter of 2.95 kilometers, the medium of space breaks down, creating continuous matter. So note that his theory predicts that matter is created within the sun itself at a radius of 2.95 kilometers from the center, starting with electrons, positrons, and their combinations, hydrogen and other lighter atoms. It is very likely that the created matter accumulated within the sun over a period of time leads to intermittent surface bursts that should account for observed solar flares. Thus, the stars formed initially from the galactic matter hydrogen dispersed in space later create their own matter. Next slide. So it turns out, according to his theory, and this is from the book Chapter 9 of Discovering Universal Reality, Chapter 13, and Universal Principles of Space and Matter, Chapter 9, the space circulation at a radial velocity of 0.0044 meters from the Earth's center reaches this limiting velocity, thus leading to the possibility of the creation of matter within the Earth. Calculations similar to the above indicate that for Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, radial distances from their centers where the speed of space circulation reaches c are 1.38, 0.4, and 0.74 meters respectively. It is therefore concluded that the centers of the larger planets possess material creation zones, and this could possibly be the reason for volcanic eruptions on the surface of these planets, including the Earth. So this goes back and reminds me of a couple presentations I'd seen quite some time ago in this forum about continents and continental plates and what may be going on in the Earth, which is not taken into account by standard geophysics. I find this interesting because my first job, I was prospecting for oil and gas and crammed down a lot of geophysics classes along the way. And so I'm fascinated by the geophysics of the Earth. And if matter is being created within the center of these planets, as well as in the sun, it leads to explanations of phenomenon that we see that previously have not been understood. So next slide, please. So dark matter, well, you know how that's going in the standard physics world. They'll be chasing that till the sun dies out, and they'll never find it, as far as I can tell. The hypothesis of dark matter in galaxies, in fact, is massless space vortexes enclosing each galaxy. Since, as shown in Space-Vortex Theory, at the surface of the galaxy's core, the space velocity field reaches a limiting velocity of light, c. It's computed that within a spherical zone, as we have said before, of a radius of 203,000 times the sun's radius, electrons and positrons are continually being created, forming into hydrogen and dispersed into galactic plane at speeds close to the speed of the galactic plane. Just wanted to reiterate that. Next slide. The electrical and repulsive forces between cosmic bodies. So now we're getting out into the rest of the universe, from the electron to the Earth to the sun. The sun and the planets possess electrical charge due to their axial rotation, repel each other electrically against gravitational attraction. This explains that these cosmic bodies must have axial rotation in the same direction for stability in their orbits. This fact should be universally true. Galaxies that collide must have opposite spin, which causes electrical attraction, reinforcing gravitational attraction, while galaxies spinning in the same direction must electrically repel against gravitational attraction. So all of you cosmologists might want to comment on that. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, concerning gravity, gravitation is a structural field of matter created in space with the creation of matter and causing inward pressure on matter from space. Einstein's finding that the speed of light is the maximum possible speed to which matter in motion can achieve is based on a more general and profounder law of nature, as per which the medium of space, postulated to have fluid and non-material properties, will itself break down in its linear or rotational flow at speed exceeding the speed of light. Okay, next slide. Conclusion. The basic principles of the René Descartes' 17th century vortex theory, though qualitative, is fundamentally correct. The medium of universal space is a three-dimensional massless entity, which in vortex motion is the primordial cosmic energy. All right, next slide. Now, people that had reviewed Tewari's work were director of the International Center for Theoretical Physics, Atomic Energy Agency, Abu Salam. He agreed that mass-charge relationship is the key to understanding of physics. The father of the black hole, John Archibald Wheeler, and Tewari were in communication. And in 75 and 77, Wheeler described Tewari's work as majestic. So for all of you who may have doubts about what has been spoken by me so far, I suggest that you heed the words of the father of the black hole, John Archibald Wheeler, and take a real close look at Tewari's theory of space-vortex theory, because it explains what the particle physics people and the quantum mechanics people do not understand. There was also a professor, Bartosi, and in a very singular book in front of the current paradigm of contemporary physics, a Cartesian-inspired work which calls for reorientation of the foundations by wisely warning that the conclusion of the modern physics that absolute space-time simultaneously and space-filling medium are discredited ideas is certainly premature. And that was from an email from this gentleman in Italy. Next slide, please. So when it comes to gravity, and we're coming up on why I wanted to show a video, but that may not work. this is a little personal history. I met a man named Robert Oxaner, and he was the National Service Manager for Motorola Radio and Television. And he traveled nationwide for Motorola. He'd go see the troops to help them with their service stations back in the 50s, when every town had a service station that was fixing Motorola TV sets. So he used to read Fate magazine and some of these more esoteric magazines of the 40s and 50s. And wherever he heard of something unusual taking place, he would decide it was time to go visit the troops in that state. And along the way, he would check out what he had just heard or read about in the magazines as something paranormal or paranormal phenomenon occurring. Well, one of the things that he came across in his travels was Wilbur Smith. And Wilbur Smith had built a machine, which I attempted to replicate, shown in the picture on the right, with my son. Was basically a spinning plate of magnets. And Robert described as best as he could remember what he had seen, which was that this spinning plate of magnets, powered by probably a vacuum cleaner motor, had the ability to attract or repel mass suspended over the center of the plate. So, next slide. So, Wilbur Smith was not a shade tree mechanic such as myself. He was very well skilled in mathematics and experimental physics. He was senior radio engineer for the Canadian Department of Transport. And in 1956, he's a superintendent of radio regulations engineering in Canada, which would be equivalent to our FCC. He built and demonstrated gravity control device witnessed by Robert Oxaner. Next slide. So, if you, at that Vimeo link in the bottom of that picture, is a video of Tewari explaining that particular experiment and why that proves his space vortex theory. And I think at this point, Ian, the best thing to do would be to, we could probably copy that link and put it in the chat box for people to watch at their leisure. It's about a 13-minute video in which Tewari goes through all the basic fundamentals of space vortex theory much more eloquently and much more in detail and with complete understanding, all of which I lack at the moment.
I do have that video. I can show it if you'd like.
Well, it's about 13 minutes, and what I was going to do was I was going to skip to the first. Let's see, I was going to bring up the first 2 minutes of it, and then from 8 minutes to 13 minutes, if you wanted to try that.
Okay, Ian, shall we go ahead and try that?
So, is this the actual video that you were going to show anyway? This thing here. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
well, let's try that, Franklin.
All right. So let's see if we can share that video and play the first 2 minutes, and then
first 2 minutes, and then we go from 9 minutes to 13 minutes.
Okay, let's give that a shot.
I really appreciate your helping me with this, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this too, as well, despite the difficulties we've had.
No, well, thank you very much. It's your endeavor.
Okay, so you guys see the video there?
I got it.
Okay, I'm going to press play and let me know if you can hear the audio.
So what we have here
I can hear the audio.
is a
Got the audio.
principle experiment
It's
that
fine.
will
All right.
help explain and verify the space vortex theory. We have here an aluminum plate in which are embedded ceramic magnets around the periphery of the plate. This plate spins at 13,000 rotations per minute. Outside of the aluminum plate is a solenoid coil here and here, around the periphery of the aluminum plate, this solenoid coil is connected. The solenoid coil actually has a power supply that allows us to change the polarity from plus to minus. So we can change the direction of the magnetic field produced by the solenoid coil. Suspended over the center of the rotating disc is a mass, a dielectric non-metallic mass. It is balanced on a fulcrum and a counterweight. Once the disc spins up to speed 13,000 RPM, the solenoid coil is excited and the mass will either bend towards the center of the plate or rise away from the center of the plate, depending upon the polarity impressed upon the solenoid coil. So we will describe here how that is a verification of space-vortex theory.
And here we have two north poles. They will be having their magnetic field as shown in the sketch. Now these magnets are in rotation. A well-known formula that dB by dt, time change of magnetic field when it is in rotation, produces electric field. So this magnetic field B1 under fast rotation of 13,000 RPM changes into electric field. Therefore, this region O, where only magnetic field B1 had been passing due to rotation, there is also a acceleration, electric field, which sets up a gradient in the ether here. In addition to this electric field, there is one more magnetic field that passes through the same region. So we have a magnetic field which is static, because this coil doesn't rotate. And we have a magnetic field that is rotating, it has set up a electric field and the gradient in a physical sense. So the interactions of these two, depending upon the directions of the fields of the magnet B1 from the magnet N, B1 field and B2 field, a dielectric, there will be upward or downward gradient in ether, and lifting this balance as it's shown up or down. If the gradient is such that this portion is lower gradient, a higher gradient, then this higher gradient will push up, it will go down. When it is the other way around, it will push down, it will go up. All these talks will be confined to mere B1, B2, E1, U, R, mathematical symbols, if ether is not there. If ether is not there, there is no electron. If ether is not there, there is no substance which can undergo vortex. But the moment we put ether, and the moment we say that ether has a mass, we cannot proceed outwards. Because how do we explain mass or charge from the most basic state unless we start from a clean state? So, it will be seen that necessity is for the substratum of ether, and at the same time dynamics of ether, which will create mass due to circulation, which will create charge due to again circulation, it to create mass due to splitting of the portion, electric field due to gradient and potential, and magnetic field when the electron moves linearly, the electrostatic field changes into magnetic field. In other words, an electron in motion only shows the magnetic field, not when it is static, if considered so. So I would say that this simple experiment of fast rotation of the magnets, fast rotation because velocity has to be more to create some quantity of electric field so as to establish the gradient in it, in ether.
So that's good. That's we can switch off now. Okay, so we go to the next slide. Are we back in communication? So one of the things that I discovered in my travels and examination of Eastern philosophy was this ancient Vedic wisdom from which Tewari, actually, when you read into it, he explains how he derived his space-vortex theory from the ancient philosophy of India, which goes back 10,000 years minimum. And so what happened to Tesla was that he met the first Hindu monk that come to the United States to talk about the ancient wisdom of India, the Vedanta, the philosophy of Vedanta. And he met Swami Vivekananda in New York City and went to Vivekananda's lectures in the 1890s, and learned from Swami Vivekananda about concepts that standard physics didn't have, and which Tesla felt gave him words to describe what he had seen when he intuited how the universe worked. So Tesla had the visions that gave him the ability to create the first alternating current generator. And he learned from Swami Vivekananda that all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the Akash, or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomenon. And he wrote that in his work, in his article, Man's Greatest Achievement. And so, this is going to make, your standard physicist go catatonic if we start talking about ancient philosophical concepts from 10,000 years ago. But the Akash, which is basically the term for the ether, fills all space. And the Akash actually means, I'll just drop this on you right now, it means the body of Brahman. And once you have a creative force acting upon it, then you create matter. So the Akash is the higher level, and our material universe is the lower level, which was created by prana. So that's kind of a side note as to the philosophy and thinking that guided Tewari. Next slide. So matter is created out of prana, since prana is Akash in motion, and Akash is the primordial superfluid substratum of the universe. And that was a quote by Paramahamsa Tewari in his book, Spiritual Foundations. According to Space-Vortex Theory, Tewari predicted that galaxies of opposite rotation will attract electrically. Those with similar rotations will repel. Next slide. So one of the interesting things that Tewari did was build a lot of machinery over time. And actually, Nuclear Power Corporation of India knew that, and they even gave him a technician to work during the day on his experiments. while he was building a nuclear power plant for them. And he would come back at night and record the data and work with the technician and set up more experiments or work to run the next day. And that went on for many years. So he was able to create quite a few machines to test. And I call Tesla's prophecy the fact that Tesla did say that ere many generations past, our machinery will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe. So that was a visionary inventor who saw possibly a solution to our consumption of resources to produce energy to heat our homes, etc. So next slide. So this is a picture of myself and Tewari in India in 2013. And this machine was tested and later filmed by an Austrian film crew who made a documentary called Out of the Void. And the movie Out of the Void is a story about an Austrian inventor in the 20s that had the same kind of concepts of Tesla and had the same kind of concepts as Tewari and was trying to build machinery. And so the Austrians did a docudrama. The first half of the movie is a docudrama about a man named Karl Schappeler, who in Austria was attempting to build what Tewari eventually built. And the second half of that Out of the Void film, also known as Aus dem Nichts in German, the second half of that film is about a physicist in Austria and also in India. And it turned out, I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up in that film because I was asked by the filmmakers in Austria to introduce them to Tewari. And so they took me to India and we filmed there. And later that film was accepted and entered into and played at the Viennale International Film Festival. So on December 22nd, 2013, based on Tewari's intuitions, he built a reactionless generator, which canceled the effective lenses law, do a very simple arrangement of magnetic circuitry. And the efficiency of that machine came out to be 3.39. So 3 times more power out than power in. And so at this point, everybody's having a fit about that concept, perhaps. I'm not watching the sidebar. I can see stuff's going in there out of the corner of my eye, but this apparently happened, and I was there and I witnessed it. And, all the instrumentation was there, power factor was accounted for, etc. And next slide, please. This was another test result on 2014 where 239% efficiency was measured. Next test. Next slide, please. So in 2016, he built the fourth of the machines based on the concept I'm about to show you. And that had an output of 4 kW. And so the efficiency of that one was 3.23 times over Unity. Next slide, please. So if you want to understand how that machine works, you can go to the patent application, which is shown at the top, and you can see what I'll describe in some subsequent slides a little bit better, how that machine works. That patent application is public record because it wasn't patented. The inventor passed away. Tewari passed away before the patent application was complete. So it's publicly available and very detailed on how Fleming's law explains the cancellation of Lenz's law, or the nullification of back torque as a result. And if you go to that video link there, if we go to the first 2.5 minutes of that video link, and then between the 10-minute mark, 9 minutes and 48 seconds to 10 minutes and 21 seconds, we can see a little bit of the demonstration of this machine in action. And wonder if you could bring that up.
Sorry, I didn't quite get your point there. Do you want to bring something up, Toby?
Yeah, that video link, that Vimeo video link. Yeah. Hi, Franklin. if you go between on that testing link from 0 to 2.5 minutes, and then from 4 minutes to 5.5 minutes.
Okay, first of all, I got to type it in here.
Yep.
Which is venmio.com/325-798-827. Okay, no, I typed it in wrong. Try again. Venmio.com.
Want me to read it to you?
325-798-827. Now I keep on coming up with a bad link on that. Do you try the second link or the first link?
Hold on a minute here. Let's see if I can bring up, put that in the chat box. Hold on 1 second, folks.
Okay, I got it.
You got it?
Typing in Vimeo wrong. Okay, so
Okay.
let's go ahead. And so you wanted to show how much is this video?
Okay, the 0 to 2.5 minutes, or no, 0 to 3 minutes, and then 4 minutes to 6 minutes.
Okay.
And I want to thank the audience for their patience with this. This is coming from the-
0 to 2 minutes, right?
Maybe we're going to go to about the 4 minute mark.
Okay, let's skip ahead.
A field of the atom and the electrostatic field of the electron, they interact without loss of their structural power.
So this shows the startup of the machine, basically a 3-phase. Okay. You can see that the third gentleman, the gentleman in the background, is from the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. Can you hear me, Franklin?
Okay, did you want to now go to 6 minutes?
Let's see. Yeah, let's go to let's try the 9 minute marks. Let's slide over to 9 minutes, see what you got.
Technology interest because they didn't believe it. Even after seeing the CD, they did not believe it. But I just gave a phone call to Mr. Anand, their Vice President Marketing. And within a year, their team, along with Mr. Ramesh and Mr. Anand, they were at at the Mr. Tewari's lab. So that is the interest and belief they have. Because just with a phone call, they were there within a week's time. And after that, you see the result.
And that engineer followed before I explained.
Yeah, he followed it before this because they are in the field.
Today also we are in generator business. We do make generators with close to 85-90% efficiency and all.
But this will revolutionize the way machines are being
Machines
designed
are being
today.
designed or built.
Mahendra Kulkarni taking care of mechanical design, Mr. Santosh Gudi is taking care of electrical design, and Vishnu Kumar is also taking care of mechanical design. These people have built, put their efforts to build this machine.
What's your engineering?
Electrical.
He's also an electrical engineer.
Oh, okay, I am too.
Me too.
Another electrical. An electrical. Yes.
All right. Still, we're trying to convince because it's a big barrier to tell and convince. Like
Right.
it's a breakthrough actually.
Right. It's a break.
Yes, and it is come over so long. It will take some time to bridge it.
Right. You just have to present the data. This is the
Yes.
measurement. You know, it's a simple
You see
measurement.
for yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Facts.
Right.
Going back to physics,
Right.
till you quantify or see, data will tell. We don't need to tell them. Data will speak for ourselves.
Yeah. What's your flux, inner gap flux?
Aircraft flux is around
around 0.9 in measuring 0.9 to 0.95.
0.9 Tesla? Wow. That's great. Right. Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. That's very difficult to get that. All right. Okay, so that wraps that up.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to explain a little bit more. The first gentleman that you saw speaking was the the technical director for Karnataka Power Corporation, which powers the state of Karnataka, the province of Karnataka, which includes Bangalore. The first engineer you saw in the background in the first part of that video was a senior engineer at the Nuclear Power Corporation of India. There were several other KPC representatives there at Karnataka Power Corporation. The second part of that video was at a factory that's been making electrical generators and motors for 100 years, and it was also it's a company called Kirloskar in Hubli, and we visited the site. They had independently replicated that machine, and you saw the engineering team that did the replication interviewed in that video as well. And once again, if we go to the next slide, I think I stuck a little link in there about how you can see that. So if anybody wants to watch that film in total, ausdemnick.at, you can either see it in English with German subtitles or in German with English subtitles, depending on your preference for language. And that, like I said, that movie premiered at the International Film Festival some time back. Okay, next slide. So if you want to look at how that machine was put together, once again, you can go to look at that reduced reaction rotary alternating current generator patent application, U.S. patent application. And next slide. So when I was first shown this experiment back in 2013, the concept for reduced reaction and how you can use magnetic fields to basically eliminate back torque, I came home and made a benchtop model of it. And basically the top view shows that I have a brass rod, which is a current carrying conductor, on a pivot. And then I have a side view showing how that's set up and running it off a battery, 100 amp capability, pure DC, 12 volt power supply. Next slide. So in the interest of time, I won't go into this in detail and leave it to you all for further study. But this diagram basically shows that we have two magnets underneath the current carrying conductor. Next slide. And the fields produce a force that counteract, go to the next slide, to counteract that pivot or counteract the current. So if we can bring up this particular demonstration, it's a 3-minute video, and that'll be the last of the videos. It shows how by putting in 2 more magnets into that picture, we can cancel back torque. Once you cancel back torque, the output of the machine is limited to the strength of the magnets and the speed of rotation. And that's just an engineering fact, as that Indian engineer stated in the video. So once again, this is a short video, and I see Franklin's typing.
Franklin is doing that, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see if we can do that.
And thank you all for bearing with me for a rather unconventional approach to presenting somebody else's physics.
It's going very well, I think. Thank you.
Okay, you want to play all of this?
Yes, all of it. Yeah, short. This is a demonstration of back torque reduction. Magnet 1, magnet 2, underneath a current carrying conductor. Imagine this conductor to be in the stator of a rotating electrical machine. Can you expand that, Franklin? These magnets would be fixed to the rotor of that machine and spinning past this conductor. In this demonstration, this conductor is mounted on a swivel bearing. And when the power is turned on, you will see that the conductor will pivot because of the torque exerted by the magnetic field in this conductor interacting with the magnetic fields of these magnets. You see the motion of the conductor as a result of interaction with the magnets. In this case, we're running 3 amps through this conductor. Now, if the magnetic circuit in a machine is modified so as to cancel the torque that you saw exerted and resulting in the pivot, by adding magnets in a certain orientation, you'll see that when this machine is turned on, there will be no pivot of the conductor. We're still running 3 amps through the circuit, but no torque is exerted, causing this to pivot. Once again, we can remove and modify the magnetic circuit. And when current again flows through this conductor, you'll see the conductor pivot. So in effect, what we have here is a modification of a standard generator design. When the magnets are placed in the proper orientation, back torque is canceled. Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you, Franklin. Okay, next slide. Well, basically, this slide says what I already mentioned, is that output is limited only by the strength of the magnets and speed of rotation. And basically, you would have a new generation of electrical machines that can greatly reduce the use of fossil fuels and carbon dioxide emissions. So the armature reaction is nullified, Lenz's law is bypassed, enormous gains in efficiency have been demonstrated as a result, and this was done with 4 different models. Each model was refined over the next. to actually, the last one he made had an overspeed condition, and there was some damage to it just before he passed away. And nothing further has been done with this technology. Next slide. So you've all heard of Hooper, I hope. His patents, and in particular of interest, is the book that he wrote. I'm showing right here, and that is the New Horizons in Electric, Magnetic, and Gravitational Field Theory. In this, he shows, and I believe, and I'm asking the audience to help me with this, how would this be involved in the operation of the Tewari device? Next slide. Basically, what Hooper did was he canceled magnetic flux and still got power generation. A real interesting video can be seen at Jean-Louis Nauden's experiment, the Hooper-Monstein experiment, and that's an online video. Next slide. So basically, for those of you who are not familiar with this, you see on the left-hand side that two magnets held so that they are adjacent to and perpendicular to a wire coming in and out of the screen are held so that their fluxes cancel at the center of that wire. And then you move those magnets back and forth. And when you're just using one magnet, you have a normal condition wherein you have current flow. And when you use two magnets with the magnetic fields canceled, you get twice the deflection on a meter. And once again, that is New Horizons in Electric, Magnetic, and Gravitational Field Theory, published by the Tesla Book Company in 1974. Next slide. So in this single experiment, they have two sources of B cross V. Both the B and the V of each source are identical in magnitude, but opposite in direction. And basically, since B cross V equals minus B cross minus V, the products are both positive and additive. The movement of one magnet alone will be found to yield a galvanometer deflection of half that obtained when both magnets are moved simultaneously, but the fluxes are canceled. One of the fascinating aspects, Hooper said, of our discoveries is that by the use of phenomenon of superposition of fields, electromagnetic induction can seemingly be separated from magnetic flux energy. In other words, our all-electrical motional electric field generator operates without the presence of detectable magnetic flux as such. It is a non-inductive device. Next slide. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, it says we're locked up again. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. You're scaring me. Okay. So I tried this experiment and I put a steel pipe around, a galvanized steel pipe, fairly thick walled galvanized steel pipe around the wire, and tried it. And I get magnetic deflection, even though not only is the flux canceled, but there is no capability of flux being anywhere near the wire because the wire is in a steel pipe, and I get the same results. So this effect goes straight through steel, and that's where we need to talk about A field and what's really going on in electrical power generation machines. Okay, next slide.
Sorry about this. It seems erratic. Yes.
So my question is, A field, how does it work in electrical generators? And I asked Denny Allen about that, and he came back with an email and said, yes, the change of B field flux through a closed wire loop and the induced EMF in the loop are both effects of the same cause, which is the changing A field at the various parts of the wire that make up the closed loop. And so both effects are correlated, but correlation is not necessarily causation. The B change in flux rule very often works, and hence its popularity today, but not always, though. And so he suggested that we look at J.P. Wesley's book, exclusively chapter 4 or 5 of his scientific physics papers. Okay, next slide. So once again, these are the references that I used. Next slide. Extensive listing that people can look at their leisure when this video goes back up on the web. Next slide. And basically, that's the end of the presentation. And that's Paramahamsa Tewari with what he credits the inspiration for his work in space vortex theory came from his guru in dreams that he had in the 70s, early 70s, mid 70s. And that his guru was Sai Baba. And he credits all work and all his theoretical explanations of the nature of the universe to his guru Sai Baba. So that's the end of the presentation.
Well, thank you very much. I'll just get rid of these slides if I can. How do I get that up here? Right, and very, very good. Well, that was a very comprehensive talk, and in fact I thought we wouldn't have any time for discussion, but actually Toby has just taken maybe 15 or 20 minutes more than the average, which is fine. We have plenty of time, and in fact I think he did a marathon job by covering all those subjects in one session. So before maybe looking at one or two of the questions or comments, and then perhaps getting some feedback, just one or two observations. I was interested actually that in the early part of the presentation, the point was made that the space vortex is in motion. So I was wondering, in motion relative to what? Is this sort of like indicating that just trying to get his name, Tewari would have accepted an absolute space?
Yes, and he often described it as if you look at a bubble floating in the water, and we're standing at the edge of the river there in India, the Kali River near the nuclear plant. He said, look at that bubble down there. So that bubble is spinning around within that water, and basically, in his theory, the bubble is the electron and the water is the ether. So it's spinning with respect to the ether, I guess you could say. So the ether, what he calls Akash, permeates all space.
Yeah.
And then the bubble, inside the bubble, there is nothing. That is the only place in the universe where there is nothing. The common concept is space is nothingness, but space is actually the ether, filled with ether, and then matter is created out of particles, electrons, positrons, neutrons, etc. And at the center of them is void space.
Well, from this exceedingly interesting theory, and I'm getting a lot of comments coming in here, which you could probably see, compliments. I think there may be that from Nick Personal and so on. You've got something practical. You've got this a generation system whereby the negative effects of maybe Lenz's law are ostensibly bypassed. And, I've been part of the discussion you had with Denny in regard to using the A field rather than the B field. And, you're having a system such as the Hooper Monstein business where B is ostensibly zero because they cancel out, and yet you're still getting induction. So there are a lot of questions, and what we might do is just devote a very small time, because there's so many questions we wouldn't have time to go through them all. We maybe take a couple of them out that you might like to address quickly, Toby, and then perhaps we'll bring in people to discuss some of the aspects in more detail. Oh, by the way, just while I'm doing that, there was a comment in, are the slides available and so on. Now, obviously, this is available for all time, I dare say, in the recordings of the StreamYard on YouTube. So this will be available immediately, and people can pause it at any time. And of course, we have the videos as well. But I don't suppose you've put up your slides anywhere, somebody asked that. I think it was Cornelius.
No, I mean, is there space on CNPS for people to put slides on the server?
Franklin, I think there probably is. They'd probably have to talk to David, would they?
Well, people have their own personal pages. I don't know whether you already have one, Toby, but if you do, you could post your information there. Or you could just send the slides to, say, Ian, and interested parties can just email Ian and you can forward it from there.
Yeah, and I've emailed that PowerPoint to Ian.
So I have that. If I mail those on to David and ask them to be put up on a separate part of the website we have related to today's talk, would that be sufficient, do you think? Franklin, I'm just not sure.
It could be. I mean, you could send the PowerPoint to me. I can host it on my personal website. I could also do that.
Yeah. Okay. Ian, would you forward that then to Franklin?
Yeah, I will. I will.
I would appreciate that, Franklin.
I might even send a copy to David as well, in case.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a place on the internet we can put it. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that answers Cornelius's question. Okay, let's just say there are a lot of discussions here about the physicality and the ether of the sort and Maxwell, and I think there were a couple of questions just towards the end which we might get to before we get to the discussion. Franklin himself answering a lot of the questions here. Yeah. I noticed as well, actually, I think I'm coming to the moment that I think it was Fractal Woman said that she'd calculated the radius of the electron, which I think was similar to your own values, using another method. I saw that somewhere coming through.
I'd love to see that. And
Yeah.
I just typed in the chat bar. Okay, I'm putting in my email address, tobygrotz@icloud.com, and my phone number. I'd love to be able to share that or talk to people about that. Well,
that would be great, Toby, because I think a number of people have put in questions which, you seem to be willing to spend the time to address individually, and I'm sure some of the people who put in these questions would be delighted to have a further discussion with you.
Okay, I just sent that through, and and once again, I'm asking people for help so that I can further understand Tewari's theories. And I am not an expert and able to present like he did, or someone skilled, still skilled in differential equations and calculus can better understand this. But I'm asking people to use their skills in differential equations and calculus to go through Tewari's work and verify it. And I would like to say at this point that the innovation that he had with his generator that canceled back torque was an inspiration that he would not have gotten had he not spent 40 years developing his space-vortex theory and building machines. But it is not necessary to understand his space-vortex theory to build that machine. And it's not necessary to understand space-vortex theory to explain the operation of the machine. All you have to do is look at the data. But it's just something that he finally came to. I describe it as an innovation as significant as what the Wright brothers came up with when they just changed the mechanical arrangement and produced a machine that could fly. And basically, Tewari changed the mechanical arrangement of magnets within an electrical generator and produced a machine that put out more power than was supplied. And that was measured using laboratory grade and revenue quality power meters and replicated independently. So that's where we're at. And
it is quite impressive, I would say, that he has these two things together, you say, oh, you don't need to understand the theory in detail, but he has a theory, all-encompassing theory, and then he has a practical application. Very frequently we have one but not the other. We have a sort of like a spun theory, and there's no evidence for it really. Or then we have some practical device, but there are complicated arguments about what the theory is, and so at the end of the day we said we don't know. So at least we have something coherent here. Franklin has put one thing up here, maybe just put up for a second. He said earlier on that there is no support that similarly rotating vortices will repel with 1 over r squared property. It is much less, he claims. It can be demonstrated but falls short. I don't know if you have a comment on that, or
I don't have a comment on that, but I'm willing to contribute in any way that we can develop answers to that, and I can provide reference material. Like I said, I'm asking for help on how to explain all this, and particularly in how A field plays into this generation, where we obviously know that there's something wrong with magnetic field theory to begin with, if we can cancel magnetic fields and still get power generation.
And I must say, there's so much information here, but you've always been very open in sort of like having a two-way dialogue. I mean, even when I met you here, you were telling me all about this, but then you were asking me for advice, and you've been asking Denny for advice and so on. So I think that's a very, laudable attitude to have. Let me just see now before we get on to the more. Yeah, this is the business. Laurie Gardy, the value 10 to the minus 11 centimeters is the Compton radius electron. I came up with the same value in my cosmology, and so did John Mackin. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I just see James Keene asked, replicated independently, and that was yes. Replicated independently by Kloskar, which is a 100-year-old manufacturer of motors and generators in India. Tewari gave them the plans, they built it and tested it, and that was shown in the film Out of the Void.
Oh, okay. Actually, Jim is one of the people I'm dying to get up in a couple of minutes, because he has about 5 or 6 comments there, and we haven't addressed them directly. So I'd like to have a discussion on that. But if you bear with me just for another few minutes, just to get through see anything that I ought to have put up, and I've just question is having trouble with the accents. I don't know if I was on the Indian accents on the thing. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I went down to the reception desk in my hotel in New Delhi a number of years ago, and I wanted to go to Agra, and maybe I shouldn't parody a bit, but he said, sorry, I beg your pardon. Another man came up. What's it? I couldn't understand a word he said. Then a third man came up, and I said, I can understand everything you're saying. Yes, I want to go. He said, yes, that's because I was educated by the Irish nuns in Delhi to speak English. Anyway, I thought they weren't too bad on the video, actually. But
no,
anyway.
and I suggest everybody go out to eat at Indian restaurants and talk to the staff a lot more, and then you'll be able to, you finally get the hang of understanding them. That English.
And actually, I have another story. We had a going away reception when I was in India on business, and the mistress of ceremonies, she said, "And ladies and gentlemen, I want your very special attention now. I'd like to thank you so much for having come here today." So she spoke like the Queen, the late Queen. So I said to one of the Indian chaps there, I said, "It's lovely to hear English spoken properly once." I said, "If we spoke like that, it would be considered stilted." So the best English is probably spoken in places like India, actually. Anyway, now, okay, so yeah, just about the torque and so on. Okay. Well, let's and as I say, you've got some good compliments from people like Patriot 293. I think that's Nick.
I see a comment here while you're looking, Ian, how to invest in the invention. And if anybody knows anybody that wants to do the work, my budgetary estimate is $300,000 to replicate what Tewari did based on material costs in the United States and labor charges and machining and materials acquisition. And Basically I worked with Tewari to kind of estimate what it would cost to replicate here, but it's never been replicated here yet. And, if somebody wants to go out and put this machine together by themselves and go get the money to do it, it's all in the patent. Go for it. If you get stuck, call me. We're all retired now, and we're not interested in starting big businesses. But if somebody knows somebody with money, or somebody has money and wants to do this, they should go ahead and do it.
Okay. Well, this is not maybe directly pertinent, but it's peripheral. Peter G has asked, do you have any particular thoughts about the Michaels and Morley, one way or the other? Maybe just a word or two before we get to more detailed.
Yeah, I think that, basically what they discovered was that experiment's not a good way to detect the ether. And that's, they had a go at it, but it didn't work. I mean, you've got the ring gyroscope experiments, right?
Right. Which do show
the laser, the Sagnac effect, right?
Indeed. And the other thing is, have you looked at the Ivor Cat business? Question is asking that.
I used to get an English, or do we say British publication, some radio magazine back in the early 80s, Radio Electronics, and Ivor Cat published in that paper quite a bit. And I love his work, but it slips my mind what it's all about. But every time I go look up his work, I'm impressed.
Okay, well, pending any further questions coming in on the general chat, let's address the private one, which means we're now coming to the green room people. Now, if anybody in the green room wants to come up immediately, just raise his hand, and I'm not surprised it's Denny. So I'm going to bring Denny up, because Denny has been in correspondence with you quite a bit on this, and you've actually referred to him. So Denny, what would you like to say today?
The predictions of this theory is that black holes exist. Is that not true?
Oh, I don't.
Because
I'll have to go look. I'll do a word search on that and get back to you.
I think I saw that somewhere as well, Denny, but I may be mistaken.
Yeah, the galaxies, and then there were black holes and everything. Don't you remember talking about galaxies and what's how the matter is formed and so on? Well, part of that seemed to have been black holes. Isn't that right, Ian?
I seem to remember that, yes. Looking at recently, within the last week or something, Denny. We were probably looking at the same thing.
But Ron Hatch, who was the last of the big GPS people and had 30 patents, including the Hatch filter, which made it so incredibly accurate, said that there are no black holes in his paper, A New Theory of Gravity, 2007 in Physics Essays. And also my co-author with me, Jeremy Dunning Davis, has translated the first Schwarzschild paper, and there was no singularity indicating a black hole. That was thrown in later on. Well, all right. And the next thing I want to do is the radius of the electron. You have it 100 times larger than usually taken. But I and Dave Bergman, well, it's really Dave Bergman first and then me, developed a model for the electron, and I tried it out on the Crane-Monstein effect, which is that if you have a cylindrical, permanent cylindrical magnet, and you rotate it about its axis of symmetry, it either gains or loses pole strength, depending on which direction you rotate it in. And that depended critically on the radius of the electron as a spinning ring. Let's see here, I've got it right here. The radius of the electron is, according to our theory, is 3.87 times 10 to the minus 13th, where So here the 10 to the minus 13th is coming in again, whereas you have 10 to the minus 11th, which apparently would not give the right answer for the Crane-Monstein effect. And one last thing, you say that mass has dimensionality L to the fourth over T in the CGS system. Could you say more about that?
I picked that up on that reference to Britannica, and so that apparently is a standard physics.
I've never seen that, you know.
I was wondering about that as well. And I was wondering, are you bringing in things like the Planck length or something like that?
Yeah, that came straight off the Britannica Encyclopedia website.
Okay,
And
I have to look it up then.
I'm not physicist enough to describe that. I'll send you guys both that link. I visited Monstein in Switzerland in 1993 and watched him do that experiment. So fascinating, yes, and we should work at resolving what the difference is, why your result is different than the Tewari and these other, and the Russian came up with, and then the woman that also Ian brought up. What assumptions, what part of the vortex are we looking at? Maybe what you're looking at is happening closer in. I don't know.
Yes, there could be, since it's a different theory of electromagnetism, it could be that it's consistent to have a radius of 10 to the minus 11th in your theory, and it's consistent in Dave's and my theory that it should be 10 to the minus 13th. That could be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A factor of 100 there.
Now, I will say that I have noticed. Okay, now this gets into some other research I was doing with mirror image symmetry coil winding, which was patented by Earl Koenig to increase efficiency of motors and generators. And on my bench, I've done this repeatedly. When I spin clockwise versus counterclockwise orientation, I get a higher or lower speed at the same power level. Clockwise is more efficient, and that's a whole different presentation of which I have hard data and absolutely no theory to back it up, other than there's something about the ether vortex and the way the Earth is spinning in that ether vortex that influences the efficiency of rotation for the clockwise movement. And that's why plants above and below the equator come out of the ground in the same orientation. And one would expect the reverse of that unless one noticed that at the equator there would be no climbing vines if the rotation that they came out of the ground was different above the equator versus below the equator. So there's something about the way the Earth and its mass is spinning and creating a vortex of energy and dragging the ether around it, or the ether influences the growth of plants so that you are more efficient when you are in a clockwise rotation.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. Any further point at this stage, Danny?
No, that's about it. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
You know, we've been in discussion for some time now, and actually we were hoping to have Toby earlier, but unfortunately we hadn't fixed on a particular date. So I said, well, let's do that, and hence today. Now, James Keane has made a number of comments here, which we haven't dealt with directly. About maybe arbitrary values of C and so on. And actually, he's made an interesting point about that apparently a perpetual motion machine might be being created if one were to accept this bypassing of, the negative torque. So I'm going to bring Jim up with his permission, and maybe you can address those things directly to Toby.
Hey,
Toby, this has really been a fascinating day, and it's been a great privilege to hear from you, sir.
thank you.
Like perhaps you can understand or share with us our skepticism about what might appear to be a perpetual motion machine. Like, I'm wondering, is this whole apparatus that we saw in the videos a fake? In other words, what I'd like to see is, let's say if excess power is being generated more than the power or energy being input, why can't that be demonstrated in a completely standalone manner? In other words, it should be possible, say, to store the excess power coming from the vortex device, perhaps in batteries or whatever, and have that run the motor that is your input power and be completely standalone, showing that you in fact have in fact that this is not some sort of a mistake.
Yeah, I can respond to that. Basically, Tewari was working on a design that would incorporate a motor into the machine so that it would run itself. The other way to do it was to take the output power and loop it back to the input through, just standard general switching arrangements. And that could be done. Tewari never spent the time to do that because he was working on a design that would incorporate a motor within the machine to run it to be a standalone device. Now, you can fool me. I graduated from the University of Connecticut, and that's not known as the epitome of electrical engineering excellence like MIT, or what they tell me is even better than MIT, ITT in India. But the engineers that measured this machine and built it in India were graduates of ITT. And you might be able to fool me, but you can't fool them. They spend their entire life or their entire time living, breathing, eating, and designing electrical machinery and using finite element analysis to look at that machinery. And they built it, they tested it, and they got the same results. They said it's over unity, period, end of story. And the data's there. The instrumentation is there. I can verify the instrumentation and the calibration of the instrumentation. And also the fact that power factor was accounted for, which a lot of people start jumping up and down about power factor. Yeah, it was measured and it was incorporated into the measurements, and revenue quality meters were used the same as they use at the nuclear power plant to measure this machine. And I've got a 15-minute video on Tewari explaining power generation. I've been accused of not understanding power factor and that Tewari didn't understand power factor, but we can present the evidence that he knew all about it by this video, and also the technical specifications of the equipment that was used to measure the machine. So, yeah, it wasn't faked. I mean, you had senior engineers from Nuclear Power Corporation.
Well, I'm not saying that, excuse me for barging in. I'm not saying that someone is being disreputable or dishonest. It could just be, some error or mistake that had not been realized. And it just seems to me that if such a device was actually demonstrated, that money would be pouring in like a thunderstorm rain from the sky into developing this technology to produce power for the Earth. So
I agree.
There just seems to be something missing here, because in the long history of machines that are so-called perpetual motion devices or producing more power than what they consume, they've all been shown to have a flaw somewhere, somehow. And so it just is amazing to me that nobody has made a standalone version where the excess power being produced by the device is used to power it and other things in a completely standalone way that people can verify there's no wires or any other inputs to it. I'm just expressing my amazement because if this effect is in fact true, it would really be revolutionary, I think. And well, again, thank you for a very interesting presentation.
Well, I am in the same place as you are as to why this has not been developed. And it seems to be the karma of the human race. I don't know what it is. I have been investigating these machines since 1980. I've traveled around the world several times and all over the country investigating these machines and measuring them. And here we have a machine that does work. And what is it that no money has fallen out of the sky yet? Well, I can tell you from having worked on proposals for Tewari, the first thing the guy with the money does, he gets excited and he wants to get this thing going and save the planet, blah, blah, blah. And he goes to his physicist and he does his due diligence, and they all come back and tell him it's impossible because over unity is not possible. So no money comes. So no venture capitalist is going to fund this machine because they're going to go to their advisors, and their advisors tell them that there's no such thing as the hydrogen atom because it's a free energy machine. It just operates forever with no energy input. You know, that's, to me, you want to see a free energy machine, look at a hydrogen atom. But, you know, they've got explanations for that too. Here's my take on it. In the evolution of consciousness on Earth, so we get a little metaphysical now. The first thing that came along, the first big thing was control of fire. Okay. The next big thing was the wheel. Okay. Once you had the wheel and the fire, then you could make wire and you could make a motor. So electrical motors and generators, electricity was the third big thing. And with that, then you could make a nuclear reactor. And that was the next big thing. Now, all that took a lot of time. What's the next big thing? What's the next breakthrough that's going to allow us to abandon all the mistakes that physics has made for the last 100 years and make a breakthrough into a new understanding of the nature of reality? And apparently the universe has a plan and we're not aware of it, but at some point somebody's going to replicate and build these machines. And you know, the funding for that is going to have to come from an individual investor that's not influenced by physicists to say it's impossible. I mean, who would have funded the Wright brothers? Because the physicists were just saying it was impossible. But then they finally did it. And then several years later, they were still writing newspaper articles saying that they're faking it. So the guy goes down from the newspaper, sees the machine, and then comes back and said the Wright brothers are faking it. What can you say? I'm as baffled as you are, James.
Well, we'll talk more about this, Toby. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much. Here's a more pointed way of saying it, Jim. If this machine worked, he would be richer than Elon Musk or something. But yeah, okay, it's an interesting concept. So thank you very much, Jim, if that's all for the moment, and because we are running out of time. But thank you for those points. And I'm delighted to repeat my understanding of what Toby said earlier, that he's very happy to talk about any of these matters further, either directly to any of the people who've participated today or maybe through us, through me. You know, that's all possible. There's a lot of information there. And unless there's any very... yeah, I was thinking of Cornelis because his... microphone and camera is gone. But could you be very brief, Cornelis? We'd like you to make a point, but please be very brief because we are running out of time very rapidly.
Well, I agree. I mean, I don't see the machine as being accurate. There's something missing there. The comment I did make earlier on the one experiment with the wire and the two magnets moving closer and keeping the magnetic field to zero, yet there was an induction. On that, I think there's an error in that that's quite obvious, and that's that the magnetic field around one part of the wire isn't significant. What's significant is the magnetic field changing through the entire circuit that the wire makes.
You've frozen up there a bit. I think you're out walking or something, so maybe the coverage has disintegrated. But I think we have the point, Cornelis.
Yeah,
you're back.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Your question.
The other comment I want to make is that, this whole Solari's, the atom design, and that the vortex atom is a very good design, and I'm all for it. But the only difference I see is that instead of being a fluid, the vortex and all of these shapes are actually wave pattern within a solid rather than a fluid motion. Within a fluid motion, it fits very well that way, and it explains the formation of the electron, as well as not just having the electron as an infinite source of energy, but actually being a self-replicating or a resonant pattern. So it goes beyond the loss. The missing part is basically the fluid part. Other than that, a lot of it really fits. So that's my comments.
Well, have you any brief response to that, Toby, before we?
No, I appreciate the second part. On the first part, we've looked at that in terms of the magnetic field in the circuit as a whole, and using my Gauss meter, the amount of energy that it takes to swing that meter, removed from the point of where the magnets are interacting with the wire, is so small that they are not going to move that meter. And to me, the fact that I enclosed that circuit with a steel pipe tends to show me something going on that cannot be explained by standard physics.
Okay, thank you very much, Cornelis. I don't know if you're
I'm willing to talk about that more with Cornelis anytime.
If you want to, you're mute actually at the moment, Cornelis. But thank you very much. We can engage in that further if necessary. And you had given us, you'd given Denny and me actually the information, and you had a little mock-up as to what was done by you and so on, about the pipe. Toby, it devolves upon me officially to close the meeting. So before doing that, would you like to say anything else in summary? It's been quite a fascinating 2 hours.
Yeah, I live in northern Wisconsin, and in the summer, this is an emerald forest of beautiful streams and rivers, etc. We're near the Mississippi River, just where Interstate 90 crosses the Mississippi. And if anybody wants to stop by and look at some of these experiments in a basement full of antique instrumentation, which still works, they're welcome to stop in and come visit us in Viroqua, Wisconsin, which is near Madison, Wisconsin, halfway between Madison, Wisconsin, and Minneapolis. Otherwise, we can do a video chat. But I appreciate everybody's interest, and once again, just to say that I'm just the messenger and inviting more inquiry into these theories and into the hardware.
Well, thank you very much indeed, and perhaps I'll just summarize and repeat a bit more about that. I think there's nobody here participating either through the green room or through the social media who will disagree with the contention that we've had a most fascinating lecture, which has covered quite a number of aspects. Frequently we have something which maybe deals with one aspect, but this has covered quite a number of things. I think you could have given 3 lectures on what you gave today, and you it covered it admirably with admittedly the help of the PowerPoint and the videos, and we'll hope to get that disseminated further. And I certainly feel a bit churlish in not immediately taking up Toby's kind invitation to pay a return visit. So that's sort of down somewhere in my to-do list. But and of course, I just repeat again the very handsome offer to discuss any of these aspects further with any of you individually or in groups. And we may even have Toby back again to deal with some of these aspects in more detail in relation to the questions we get in later. So the time has just passed us now. We must close it. And obviously, I'm sorry to do that, but that's probably a good sign. We had a very, very good lecture today. We had a very good discussion. And I think there's a lot more to stimulate our minds in the future. And I look forward to the exchanges. So I'd like to thank you all the people who made comments in the social media participants, also the people in the green room, particularly the people who spoke and put those interesting points to Toby. And of course, most of all, Toby, for having taken the trouble to get up. It's 9 o'clock, not 10 o'clock. He's Central Zone in Wisconsin time zone. So he's devoted an early Saturday morning, and Saturday morning has gone now. He's done a lot of work on the slides. I know that because he's been in touch with us in the previous weeks. So I'd like to thank him most sincerely on behalf of CNPS, on behalf of all of you, and personally on my behalf as well, for making such a good presentation possible today during my watch, if you like. What we're doing actually is, I think Roger Anderton will be back with some more of his relativity ideas, special relativity mainly. And again, keep an eye on the announcements. I think Jim Keane actually has very kindly agreed over the holiday period to talk to us. So I think maybe near Christmas and just after the new year, we're hoping to have Jim up again, and we'll finalize that with the information. So, as I say, this presentation will be available immediately on YouTube, so it'll be recorded there, and it will be supplemented by the slides, which I'm going to endeavor to have them put up. And thank you very much, Franklin, for agreeing to put them up on your site as well, which is very advantageous. So without further chat, I'll close the meeting. I'll end the stream now, and I'll wish you all, wherever you are in the world, you're probably mainly in North America, but some of you are in other places. I'll wish you a very good day.